Nobody in the neighborhood could believe it when Marcus noticed something strange. His electricity bill skyrocketed, even though he lived alone and carefully monitored every device. But one evening, as he walked past his garage, he saw it. Karen, the HOA board member known for meddling in everyone's business, had quietly plugged her Tesla into his solar grid. She acted like nothing was wrong, like his hard-earned energy was hers to steal. At first, Marcus couldn't believe the audacity. He had built that solar system with his own savings, proud of being energy independent. Yet here she was, draining it for her luxury. His neighbors whispered about how Karen always crossed lines, but this was different. Marcus knew he had to act. What he didn't realize was how far Karen would go, and how one decision would set the whole neighborhood on edge. The next morning, Marcus unplugged the cable, hoping that would be enough. But when he came home later, he found it connected again. Karen had simply helped herself, shameless as ever. It wasn't just electricity anymore, it was principle. He confronted her politely, but she smirked and said, "The HOA covers shared resources." Marcus was stunned. Shared resources? His solar panels weren't HOA property, they were his investment, his pride. That night, as he sat on his porch, neighbors stopped by, whispering that Karen had a history of twisting HOA rules to suit herself. She fined families for lawn decorations, sent letters about garbage bins being an inch too far out, and now she was leeching off him. Marcus realized this wasn't just about energy. It was about standing up against someone who thought rules only applied to others, never to herself. Marcus decided to outsmart her. He installed a small voltage monitor in his system, something Karen wouldn't notice. Every time her car charged, he received an alert on his phone. The proof was undeniable: timestamps, wattage, usage. He gathered days of evidence, but instead of running to the HOA board, he waited. He wanted Karen to dig herself deeper. Every time he saw her sneak around, plugging her Tesla in with that smug satisfaction, his patience grew thinner. His friends warned him, "She'll just twist the rules." But Marcus knew that bullies thrived because no one challenged them. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky, Marcus stared at the glowing graphs on his phone. A plan formed in his mind, not just to stop Karen, but to make sure she never tried it again. The following week, Karen grew bolder. She began plugging in during the daytime, waving casually at neighbors as if she were entitled to his solar energy. The HOA gossip mill churned, and whispers turned into laughter at her arrogance. Yet Karen acted untouchable, convinced Marcus couldn't do anything. What she didn't know was that Marcus had already reconfigured his solar inverter. The system could control voltage output, normally used for efficiency, but in the right hands, it could send a surge strong enough to shut down an unprotected charger. Marcus wasn't out to harm her, but he wanted to give her a lesson she wouldn't forget. As he double-checked his settings, his heart raced. The next time she plugged in, the trap would spring. And everyone would see the truth. That evening, Marcus sat by his window, watching the driveway. Sure enough, Karen walked over with that same entitled stride, dragging the charging cable into his outlet. The moment her Tesla connected, Marcus tapped his phone. The system hummed, voltage climbing higher and higher. Karen leaned against her car, scrolling on her phone, oblivious. Then, suddenly, the charging system tripped, lights on her dashboard flashing red. She jumped, confused, pulling the cable out in a panic. Neighbors peeked from their porches, murmuring as Karen struggled to restart the charge. But no matter what she tried, the system refused to cooperate. Marcus calmly sipped his coffee, watching as she realized something had gone very wrong. The woman who always claimed control was finally powerless. Karen stormed to Marcus's door, furious. "What did you do to my car?" she snapped. Marcus stayed calm, showing her the monitor logs, every timestamp of her stealing his energy. For the first time, Karen's smug expression faltered. Neighbors gathered, hearing every word. The woman who fined people for leaving a flower pot on their porch now stood exposed as a thief. She sputtered excuses, claiming she thought it was community property. But the evidence was undeniable. Marcus didn't yell, didn't lose his cool. He simply said, "You wanted shared resources. Then maybe it's time the community knows how much you've been taking." The crowd murmured, cameras caught the moment, and suddenly Karen realized she had lost more than power, she had lost her image of control. The HOA held an emergency meeting days later. For years, Karen had ruled with intimidation and selective enforcement. But now, her hypocrisy was undeniable. One by one, neighbors stood up, recalling times she had abused her position. Marcus presented his data, calmly and firmly, and the board voted. Karen was removed. She could no longer fine, threaten, or bully anyone. As she left the hall in silence, Marcus felt a wave of relief. His solar panels still stood on his roof, a symbol of independence, but now, they carried another meaning. Standing up against unfairness. Neighbors thanked him, some even cheering quietly. Karen had thought she was untouchable, but in the end, the truth had surged brighter than her Tesla ever could. And Marcus knew the neighborhood would never be the same again.